Hi everyone, welcome to video 3.3. Today we're going to be talking about using a feminist lens to look at literature. And our objective is that you're going to be reading chapter 3 of Mice and Men, and you're going to use the feminist lens to analyze this chapter. So all of you have probably heard this word feminist before. You probably have an idea about what it means. It's all about looking at women's equality. And I would expand that to say equality of people of all gender identities and all sexualities. As a reminder, the critical lens, it's also called a literary theory, and it's just a way of looking at a text or a book that you're reading. It's kind of like wearing a pair of glasses because it changes the things that you see and it changes the way that you look at the text. So it's a way of finding a deeper meaning in literature. And they're like glasses because it changes the way we see things. We are investigating 3 different literary lenses in this unit. Remember, the first one that we talked about was the Marxist lens in our last video. And remember, that one was all about social class, who has power, who has money, who has influence. The second lens we're looking at is the feminist lens today, and that's going to be all about gender and sexuality and how that impacts power. So there are a couple key ideas you need to understand in order to get the feminist lens and how to look at a text through a feminist lens. The first key idea is that the feminist lens tells us society is run and dominated by heterosexual men. So heterosexual, that just means straight. And you can think about, like, historically in the US, who has held positions of power. Think about who has been president, who has been CEO, or the people in charge. And historically, that has been straight white men, right? And by definition, that means that women and people in the LGBTQIA community are seen as others who hold an inferior position in society. So while the white straight men are the ones having political positions of power, making decisions, making money, the women, the queer people are at the bottom of society, not being valued or given power. If you want to read more about the history of feminism or more about this concept, I did post a brief article from the History channel on our Schoology page, so you can feel free to explore that. There are a bunch of questions you can ask while you're reading of Mice and Men that'll help you think about the feminist lens. So the first question is, how do the characters' gender and sexuality affect their power that they have in the text? And we can think about the book. So far, there's really only been one woman who has a role in the book, and that's Curly's wife, right? So I want you to think about, as you read, how does her gender as a woman impact the amount of power that she has on the ranch among the men in the book? Second question to ask is, are there traditional gender roles? Do characters follow them? How are characters who do not follow them treated by others? So traditional gender roles, that means like the things that you're expected to do based on your gender. And some traditional gender roles include like men being really strong and masculine and women being weaker and more feminine, maybe like girly, into makeup, emotional, things like that. So does Curly's wife fit the traditional gender roles of a woman? Do we see George and Lenny fitting traditional gender roles of men? What roles do women have in the text? Are they in minor or prominent roles? So far we've really only seen one woman. What kind of role does she have? Is Curly's wife a minor character, an important character? And what do you see her doing? Next question is, what influence does society and culture have on gender roles in the text? So remember, our society and culture, we are in the 1930s. We are in California on this migrant worker ranch. So that's the kind of societal cultural norm. And how does that moment in history impact the way that people see gender? Do they look at men and women differently than we do now in 2023? Oh, what is happening? All right, sorry about that. The next question is going to be, would an LGBTQIA character be accepted by the text? So if you don't already know, based on the pride flags I have in my room or my pins, I identify in the LGBTQ community. I also have an older sibling who is non-binary, which means they use they, them pronouns, and they don't identify as a man or a woman. And so I like to think about, like, if my sibling and I were to go back in time and hang out with George and Lenny and the guys on the ranch in Of Mice and Men, would we be accepted and supported for being open about our sexuality or our identities? And I don't really think we would. So that's an interesting question to think about in the context of this book. The last question is, are men, women, and people of other genders held to the same expectations as each other in the text, or are there different rules? So think about, like, the rules that Curly has for his wife. Is she allowed to do what she wants, or does he kind of put restrictions onto her? Now I want you to think about examining our own society through a feminist lens. So you could think about the US in general, you could think about Cooper, you could think about your family. What are some of the expectations and rules for men that you see in your life or the world around us? What about some of the expectations or rules that you see for women? Are they different than the rules you see for men? And then, do you think that men, women, and people of other genders have the same amount of power in our society? I want you to explain with some examples. And after you're done watching this video, please start reading chapter 3, and you will be taking some notes in your packet.